under Trump, you really see some of that corruption that we talked about initially. This was from 2020. So the Obama administration, during that administration, the cases of misconduct among border officials dropped steadily. But since 2017, when Trump took office, cases have reached a 5-year high, according to a recent internal Customs and Border Patrol reports. This is them looking into themselves, so you can only imagine it's probably higher than that. So what does that look like? Despite the efforts, with building the wall, et cetera, the effect of deterrence hasn't had, an impact the way they would like. So traffickers have paid millions of dollars to U.S. border agents to keep drugs and people flowing throughout Trump's time in office. This is from a Mexican woman who was in charge of smuggling operations in a drug cartel in El Paso, saying, quote, "We pay as much as $10,000 to a migra," so a border patrol officer, only to look the other way while we're using a tunnel to smuggle drugs and to tell us of new trends on surveillance. So how to make the robot dog heal. You just scratch right under here. You just scratch. But, there you have it. So it's like, okay, you increase the surveillance, but so long as you're not taking care of the corruption, in a world that you imagine the surveillance or militarism even worked in the first place,
right,
there's still the corruption where people are being paid to look the other way. $10,000. It's a pretty good paycheck. And there's a little bit more. There's some cases, right? So you've got a Border Patrol agent in Arizona being arrested on suspicion of drug trafficking with Mexican criminal organizations. The same month, a U.S. border agent was arrested in Juarez and accused of smuggling 30 rounds of ammunition. We've talked about on this show with Yohan Grillo about the amount of guns that are flowing down south through the border. And this was in September of 2020. 6 border agents were arrested on suspicion of stealing cocaine and marijuana from dealers to sell in the U.S. And that month, the CBP Laredo officer was arrested in connection with 4 murders and 1 kidnapping. Jen, it's gotten worse.
What's your problem, Francesca? You hate America.
Exactly. I must. That's the feeling I'm feeling. How does it, like, when Trump got elected and you're looking at it, the way he stoked all that violence and rhetoric around the border. I don't know. How was that for you as someone who's worked on the border?
I know as a woman from Alabama who grew up in the 70s what that was, and I knew obviously as a Border Patrol agent what the Border Patrol had been going to during these Bush years and Obama years, and from the rhetoric and what I saw, that's when they separated the children, when they announced they were separating the children, that was the first time I publicly came out and said, this, you guys have got to lay down your badges and guns. You can't do this. And of course, nobody cared, but I just felt like
we care.
Well, I felt like, I had gone on into the Border Patrol wanting to serve my country. At the same time, I wanted to be a civil rights attorney, believe it or not. And, and, didn't have any knowledge of the southern border. And I felt like I was in a place in my life personally where I felt like you need to stand up and do the right thing. You need to see, things, what's been going on, you understand how the system works, you understand why this is wrong. Maybe some agents don't know that this is wrong, but at least say something. You need to say something. And so I just felt like I couldn't stay quiet and live my life, that had nothing to do with immigration at the time without saying, no, this is wrong. We cannot do this. What we're doing is, number one, our deterrence policies are genocidal. They just are. And that, and then just, that whole mess of taking children away from their parents. I just don't understand how agents could have done that. And people would say to me all the time, well, you've probably done that. And I'm like, no, we never did that. We never held people more than 3 or 4 hours for processing. And people did not die in our custody like they were dying in the Trump administration. And then the bragging about it on top of it and the laughing about it. It's just, there's no honor in that, and the Border Patrol motto is honor first. And it just threw me right back into it. And I think I just couldn't walk away. I just had to start talking and writing about it to,
And that's when you did, correct? That's when you did
yeah,
start speaking out, was during the Trump
yeah,
years.
yeah.
That's huge, and of course, like, I think that moment moved a lot of us. I think the specific cruelty and the ways that, you have I think for me, what I started to learn in the Trump years was that, oh, our strategy for stopping migrants is to be as bad, if not worse, than the narcos and the cartels and the gangs that these people are fleeing. That, like,
Yeah,
that's all we're doing is just,
yeah.
"Oh, no, no, we can be just as bad, so you'll stay away."
Hmm.
And, I mean, once you realize that, I mean, it's like, what are we even doing? All of this money that we're throwing at it. Um,
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
I did wanna actually speak out. I mean, speaks to that moment, and specifically some of the fallout from what ICE was doing in those days. I don't know if
Hmm.
you guys remember Kirsten Nielsen, good old DHS secretary, who was horribly chanted down while dining out. I think she was the one dining at a Mexican restaurant when the protesters accosted her. But
Yeah.
so ICE actually asked Kirsten Nielsen to dissolve ICE. So remember, the whole like,
Hmm. Hmm.
stop ICE, abolish ICE. Yeah, ICE wants to be abolished. So this is
Hmm.
more than a dozen U.S. Customs or Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents signed a letter to Homeland Security Secretary Kirsten Nielsen asking to eliminate ICE and shift its work to another bureau. So these are 19 ICE investigators who basically said in this letter that they are not able to do their work. So agents in the division work on crimes like drug trafficking, cyber crimes, and human smuggling. Um, the rest of this article goes on to say basically they're like, look, we can't focus on actual crime or criminals
Hmm.
because we're an enforcement agency for anyone crossing the border, no matter if they're, a woman and children looking for work. And we're being unfairly demonized, at least, you know, or fairly demonized. We're being demonized because of this. And it's like, yeah, no shit, bud. Like you are like, and you
Yeah.
should be. But it's interesting that you have this call from inside the agency going, if you really want us to do our job or what we think our job is supposed to be, you need a separate entity, maybe go back to the way it was before 9/11 and stop criminalizing people who are simply crossing the border because they are not criminals. That is
I
not the
think
same.
that that's I think that that letter came from investigators within ICE who, as it said, were more working on these drug smuggling and trafficking of sex victims and so forth, and that kind of thing. And during the Trump years, what had happened is they were like, "Well, we heard this guy here is undocumented. Go get him." And so then they ended up becoming that type of police force. And that's what people who worked in investigations and obviously doing sometimes very serious investigations, um, they don't want to be doing that. If they were doing that, then they would just become a border patrol agent. So
Right.
they don't want to do that. They want to actually put people in jail who are criminals, not go after mom and dad because they crossed in the 80s, to find jobs.
What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/bitchuation room. Do it.